Welcome to the Seattle Overload Tape podcast of the week, where unfortunately we are having to talk about another Seahawks defeat. I mean, they've only lost 3 games out of 5. The Saints game was disappointing because the defense obviously performed badly. We're going to kind of start with the defense, Griff, because I mean we're in danger of becoming a copium podcast, a pure cope podcast, but there is some positives from the All-22. There's also some negatives. And so we'll deal with that. And then we'll talk about the Geno Smith MVP campaign and an update on that and how all that's going, and then the offense. So, first, before we do that, big thank you to Brendan at Elm Coffee Roasters in Seattle. As I said in the past podcast, make sure you listen to that, the news podcast. If I lived in Seattle, I'd definitely be going to Elm Coffee because it looks great. When I go to Seattle again, it will happen. I will definitely be visiting. And Brendan supported the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Brendan.
Co-sign. Thank you, sir. Very kind.
There we go. Right, so Griff, let's start, I guess, with the Taysom Hill thing, because delving into the tape from that, it was not quite as bad, I think, as I thought from the broadcast. Like, they bottled up some of his stuff, but then, I mean, it was a combination, I'd say, of execution, but also some naive scheme, particularly to like the empty stuff. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. It was it was a game of like now the Saints are different with what I'm about to say, but it was a game of like each team has their main stuff and they have their change-ups. And it was a game of their change-ups or their auxiliary, whatever you want to call it, being excessively good and Seattle being excessively bad in enough areas for it to matter. But then the main stuff, they actually defended pretty well. And like you saw a vision, well, you saw better execution, but then you actually saw a vision schematically and how they can build out of something now, maybe, whereas maybe before you didn't necessarily see a vision. You saw poor vision and poor execution. Now I think we see a little bit better vision, but it's still concerning how they performed poorly to the extent that they did in the areas that they did perform poorly in. And I think it was a combination of, like you said, naive scheme. Like they were prepared, but then not quite prepared enough. And like the Saints did throw out different stuff. Like they did have counter punches. Like they were ready for teams to, adapting to them because they have to be, because they have to be a high variance team with Winston out and having this Taysom Hill package, right? So much is just formation and blockers dependent, and like everything is so heavily specialized. And Seattle was just not, they were schematically wrong place, wrong time for this game. That's on them.
Well, and also like the Taysom Hill quarterback draw from empty. Like, why on earth are Darryl Taylor and Quentin Jefferson taking off upfield with that pass set? Like, don't be so naive. Like, surely the game prep is, Taysom Hill's a runner, even though it's empty and you get a pass set, just, hang in there a bit because it's probably going to be draw. Like, well, I just didn't understand that. And that kind of lack of preparation on the tape is like, well, it looks like lack of preparation. I'm sure they were told it, but just the failure to execute is really frustrating. Then, as you said, the scheme element, like when they went into the heavy package, that was a bit frustrating too. It was interesting. I only just saw it actually, but 4 days ago, someone tweeted out, should have got the at, but someone tweeted out a video of Jordan Brooks and Quandre Diggs going at each other after verbally, but they were having to be restrained by teammates.
Yeah.
After the Taysom Hill passing touchdown in the red zone, which, I mean, that's a complicated bust because they're like fiddling around their cover 3 to avoid getting quarterback drawed out of empty, right? And
yeah,
the Saints, yeah.
Well, I liked the call because it was cover 2 up top, right? But the corner was inverted. It was Artie Burns playing a half, right? And you had Ryan Neal down playing what is normally the cloud. So you've got to.
Well.
Right?
This is the thing. I'm not so sure as I draw up the offensive line, but
okay,
I actually think it was cover 3.
Okay. Well, I mean, and that's part of the confusion because it looked like Diggs thought they were playing clearly either an inverted coverage potentially, and then everyone else thought they were playing cover three. So even if it was inverted, you get kind of very similar cover three four under spacing. The four under spacing you would see in cover three in that coverage. But I suppose that point is moot because if they're, I mean, I think really the crux of their blow up on the sideline was that not everyone was on the same page with what the call was. It's one thing to have an assignment bust and be like, that was on you. But it's another thing to be like, I was playing the rules of this call, you were playing the rules of that call. And clearly someone miscommunicated a check. Like it was a procedural problem, I think, at the crux of this, at the source of it. And I think that's what they're arguing over. And it makes sense that Brooks and Diggs would be arguing because they're the two guys that handle the most in terms of actual verbal communication pre-snap.
Right.
So also I liked the intensity because, I mean, not to extract too much from, body language and trying to not fan fiction too much, but that didn't seem like the blame game. That seemed more like frustration from having high expectations and knowing they can be so much better than that. So I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, get pissed. So you guys should be fucking pissed right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, because the way I saw it was they had Ryan Neal down to the tight end, which was initially the two receiver side, right? Like over here.
mhm,
And then when they motioned, they had three wide receivers to the defense's right, and Diggs had been shading to the trip side, right?
mhm,
When they were in that empty wildcat formation, then they jet motion across, and Diggs just locks on to his side. I think probably because Neal was opposite, so he thinks Neal's going to carry it, and then Brooks, sorry, is going to play the three receiver up in the strong hook. But Brooks clearly expected Diggs to go across to the new three receiver side and carry the three up, because they wanted both linebackers not having to carry anything, so they could focus
right.
in on the box first and
And,
Hill.
and and even if a linebacker was supposed to match there, it would have been Barton because he would have been the weak hook. So
Yeah, and he didn't look for that at all. So
right. So that makes, like, they clearly weren't on the same page, and I think you're right that Diggs was out of position, but Diggs was probably pissed because he thought, well, something needed to have been communicated or something like that.
yeah,
Um, so that's frustrating, but that's a play where, like, they busted something. It's bad to bust. That was real. That was a real bust, but it's not something at the same time that necessarily projects forward because you're not facing Taysom Hill again. And the issue was more so, like, you're not preparing for Taysom Hill, the individual, so much as you are to an extent, mostly at the tackle point, right? But you're preparing for the formations and concepts and the combinations that comes with Taysom Hill, and that clearly fucked them up. Like they twisted themselves into a knot with the procedural aspect of it, and unless they've run into Lamar Jackson this year, I mean Kyler Murray, but not to the, like, they don't, they have, their option game, and yeah, you can take off, but like it's just not something they're going to have the same issue with, because again, like, Taysom Hill's a package, Kyler Murray is the whole offense, right?
I don't know why they didn't do more like bare looks against it. They sprinkled it in, but against the empty stuff. But they seem so afraid of that. I don't understand why.
Yeah, because they played more bear to Andy Dalton and
They
Kamara,
did. They did. Like,
which made sense because they're, not to get ahead of ourselves, but they're going back to the basics, and they're like, all right, we're just gonna put our guys into scheme and thus techniques that they're comfortable in. Let them play fast. Let them know what they're doing. Hopefully that compounds positively, and then they're going to play more confidently and play better, on a snap to snap basis. And that was true for just about every single one of them
mm,
on early downs against when Dalton was in. Like, his numbers weren't good. Kamara's numbers weren't good early down. So at least minus a draw play or two, which is kind of part of the same conversation. But
yeah. So in terms of the Dalton scheming, given that acknowledging they're not going to face a wildcat quarterback like Hill again. In terms of the Dalton scheming, I thought it was fine. There was a lot of middle field closed, and so that's cover 3, cover 1, and I felt some of the passing downs. I was a bit surprised they didn't play more middle field open stuff, cover 4, quarter, quarter, half, quarter,
Right.
quarter. Especially when that's supposed to be their kind of new identity, if you like, even if it's not that new. But anyway, and I guess there wasn't even that much disguise either. And I guess it's kind of classic Pete defenses against like lesser quarterbacks and receiving corps they don't respect, where
Right.
they just go for the one-on-ones and don't think a quarterback can complete that much of them. And Dalton did well on third down, right? But I don't think it's if buts and maybes as ever. But if you remove the Hill stuff, I think they kind of bottled Dalton up, right?
Yeah.
He had that one throw to Olave, which I mean, that was against a cover 1 blitz or cover 3 blitz, but realistically, that was a very, very tight, good coverage from Kobe Bryant. I mean, other than that,
Yeah. Yeah. The penalties hurt them. I mean, they got the Saints. They backed up the Saints a couple of times, but then the Maffei penalty and then the rare Nwosu penalty, that really hurts them. Tariq had the one tightly contested like diamond release slant or whatever they call that, outside in slant. Just a tough route, and even had a hand on the ball. It's just all right. Okay, give it to him. But so yeah, they were basic, and I think that was, I mean, two things. One, like you said, they had no reason to respect the receiving core, which they were right to this game. So because they had, everyone was injured, so you don't need to play too high. And then, but at the same time, that was the timing of them running into a busted up receiving core was well met, because they really needed an excuse to play gapped out, which means, one defensive player for every gap the offensive line presents, which usually means you have one high safety, not two deep safeties. So that let them play more cover 1, but then also play more rep their new way of playing cover 3 now, right? Rip Liz, instead of carrying one seam, you're carrying both seams. So that was probably good work for Kobe Bryant and a combination of Ryan Neal and Josh Jones, depending on what personnel package they were in. But then, so then from there, they were able to kind of win back the lost multiplicity of not playing it too high by blitzing a little bit more. And that allowed them, one, it's just for the hell of it, like you're just disguising, right? That's kind of where they disguise a little bit, disguise intent. But then secondly, allows them to generate negative plays, even if you're playing your rules right. If you don't have a crazy ability to generate turnovers just by virtue of your own talent, or a crazy ability to generate, sacks and stuff, right? You need something to kind of scheme an action at the offense within your base structure, so that you're not just preventing positive plays, but you're also generating negative plays for the offense. That was their way of doing that. And those Mike blitzes and Will blitzes, sending them, doing a good job of getting them either opposite the slide or getting them with the slide, but combining it with a twist so that someone was getting free. And you're not necessarily even trying to sack the quarterback so much as you're forcing him just to make a quicker decision so that everybody can rally to the ball and play downhill back to the front. So from the back toward the front. So I thought that was a good touch. And that was something like Ken Norton Jr. last year was really starting. It was like he discovered fire. They weren't giving up any explosive plays last year, especially from week 6 on. They were giving up very little in the intermediate, but then they couldn't make the offense go backwards, or they couldn't tackle that check down for 2-3 yards instead of 7 or 8. So you started sending those 5-man pressures, whether they be fire zones or cover 1 behind it, to on mixed downs, like mixed tendency, like second and medium, for example, or the occasional 1st and 10. And they worked to great effect. And I think mostly, like, the structure of this worked. It's definitely not something they're going to do at the same rate moving forward.
Right.
But they needed it for this game. And I like the theory behind it. So
Well, my other view on that as well, on top of like the added blitzing also being a case of is Andy Dalton out there, like it's disappointing that they didn't get home a bit more. But it's as you said, the new way of playing cover three is basically going to be man to man. It like to the less experienced tape watcher, it looks like cover one, and even to us, sometimes we're like, is that 3 or 1? Because the way it matches the routes, you can't really tell, right? Like,
yeah,
and so it's going to be a one-on-one outside anyway, especially for like the kind of say what the Saints were doing, where it's just basically a comeback to Olave picking on Mike Jackson, right? Like down here, and like the thing is, like you may as well blitz then because because they're not targeting that area of the field.
right.
So let's just add pressure on.
And like the one thing about if you send 5, right, that means you only have 6 in coverage instead of 7. You might go, okay, well, your remaining linebackers left on an island with the running back. But if you scheme and time the blitz up right, that blitz keeps the running back in the protection scheme. So then you're kind of you're +2 in the numbers now. Now only 4 guys are releasing into the pattern, and you have 6 defenders. It's 6 versus 4, just like it would have been 7 versus 5. So I think that was the other aspect why they sent these pressures, because they were really just trying to keep the running back as part of the protection and not part of the route pattern. So
Right. And on that Alvin Kamara big screenplay, like what was tricky is Kamara was opposite to this drawing. He was on the left of the formation, but they send both linebackers, right? With cover one behind it, so should be okay. The idea being that a linebacker keeps Kamara in protection, so you still have 6 coverage defenders back there for their 4 receivers out on the routes, right?
right,
The problem they had, 5 for the 4, but the problem they had was the Saints crossed Kamara across the formation, and then Barton, he'd already gone on his blitz. He didn't pick up. There's a one bad play Cody Barton had, and we'll get to the linebackers. But one bad play he had, he didn't pick up Kamara on the screen. He just blitzed anyway. He should have picked him up. If he picks him up, the play's dead. But it's across the formation rather than just releasing straight downfield on the screen. And Kamara did a good job selling like he was going to be a blocker, but still
right.
bit disappointing from.
And the other aspect on that play is that Mona also saw it, but then he got, what do they call it, slingshot by the center. That center had a bad game, but that was his one like baller play where he tossed all 340, 50 pounds of Brian Mona to the ground. On that other, if Mona kept his feet, he might have been able to get a hand on him. If he doesn't even get a hand on him, or if he even gets a hand on him, they might slow him down enough that the area defenders can rally quicker. But frustrating. Also, that call just felt unnecessary. You don't need to actually blitz. You don't need to send 6. You just don't have to. If it works, great, but you don't have to do that there.
Sure, but also like it's still cover one. Like just play the running back. Like
yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, don't blitz the quarterback, then blitz the running back. Like you're.
I feel like that's what they were trying to do.
Like peel blitz.
I think that's what they were doing.
Okay.
I think that was it. Like
then he fucked
they
up
just
the peel
didn't.
blitz.
Yeah.
I almost said green dog, but then I caught myself. No, wait. That's called a peel blitz, not a
imagine.
Now I'm not going to get owned on Twitter for calling
Hug
it
rush.
Potentially hug rush.
Right. So they also Tariq Woolen's interception, very impressive on a comeback, even though it's thrown late. Dalton panicked. Looks like a pressure, but Seattle only rushed 4 dudes. Bonus fire zone, pretty cool. Where they basically send 3 off one side, but they drop Darryl Taylor, and Brooks ended up matching up on Kamara at the back, and basically Darryl Taylor's ends up in the low hole, and it looks like cover 1, but it's actually like cover 3, but with fire zone coverage everywhere else. Yeah.
No,
so,
all right. This is where I pat myself on the back. Did you see my tweet during the game?
There's a few of them.
Yeah, I might have. Specific to the Woolen interception. Did you see a tweet preceding it?
No, I did not.
I said Andy's underthrowing his throws now, that means a Woolen interception is coming. And
Oh,
then like 5 minutes later,
well,
now
they've added an edit feature to Twitter now, haven't they?
that's true, but they tell you if you edit. Now I was laughing because
Oh,
I
they do.
tweeted that out of pure cope. I didn't actually think that was happening. It just plus I do prediction tweets like that all the time. So like I quote tweeted later,
Did you
volume
delete them
shooter.
all after?
Of course, of
Nice,
course.
nice. That's good.
Anyway,
I could
um,
learn a thing or two here. Right. So, in terms of the positives, right? We've touched on a few of them, kind of sprinkled in here and there, but one major positive for me was the inside linebackers. Both of them played well. Barton had that one bad play I mentioned. Jordan Brooks was all over the field, being an absolute unicorn.
yeah,
And Barton was fitting the run well and actually doing pretty good in coverage as well. He's obviously just not the same level of athlete as Brooks, but I thought both of them put together a really solid game. And if the D line had executed in better moments, if Barton had played Kamara as he should have done, if the coaches had a better plan for Hill and been a bit more prepared for the Saints' adjustment, I think we're talking about this as a really good defensive game, along with the fact they were put in bad positions, right? But yeah, what did you
yeah.
see out of Barton and Brooks?
It was well, yeah. They both played really well, and part of that was because they played so much one high. That meant they only have one gap to worry about, or their lever key, or whoever the puller is. That's the only thing they have to worry about in the run game. And that means that they can play faster, as in not like, oh, they were slowed down before because it was confusing, but like the literal techniques they were asked to play before is you play slow and then decisive. And you can't be decisive if the blocks are losing up front. So if the defensive tackles, there's nothing to be decisive toward. So you're just playing slow, period. And then sure, it can compound and you can also be confused at times. This was a game where they were the scheme asks them to play fast, follow their eyes, and shoot their shot. And they were doing that all over the place. I mean, like getting leverage on gaps, just firing off their key. Even Cody, like Cody looks a lot better, not nearly as well as Brooks, but he looks a lot better taking on contact when his feet are in the right place to take on that contact. He's not a guy that can right a losing or who can unsink a sinking ship like Brooks can. Like he can be caught in a bad position and still make a physical play. Barton has to be in the perfect spot for it. But the whole theory behind Cody Barton being a possibly good linebacker or to have a good game means his eyes have to get his feet in the right place. And when he can do that, he's fast enough to do that. If his eyes are playing fast enough, then it looks a lot better. I mean, he was making plays in the run game. And then, yeah, to your point about having good games in coverage, both of them were great playing their play action stuff, their under center play action, the boot stuff, and the pocket play action. I mean, they weren't giving them anything over the intermediate, so that was really encouraging. And like even though they were down guys, they were trying. Carmichael, their offensive coordinator, they were still
Peter.
trying to. Yeah, that's right. He was still trying to go deep. And he wasn't trying to go deep in that like, oh, this guy's going to beat that guy. He was trying to break Seattle's structure.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, it doesn't matter who's running the routes. You still have to play your rules. And Seattle's rules were really, really good this game at the second and third level for the
Yeah.
most. So, like that's positive in and of itself. That projects forward.
Yeah, that to
So,
me was a sign that it's starting to click together. Because even in like the rare middle field open we saw this game, like tight wheel 6, where it's their base approach to 21, like heavier personnel kind of stuff, where it's quarter half to the strength out of like a bare front. Like there was some really nice kind of turn back and run robot kind of reps from Brooks and Barton in that.
yeah,
And then the third level, the way they were playing that as well, it just looked good. Now, I think coverage wise, Mike Jackson, they tried to pick on him a bit. He kind of came through though. Like, he gave up some stuff underneath to Olave, but at least he's staying over the top. He had a really nice pass breakup, flipping his hips after cross, pedal to read, then little crossover run from off coverage and hip flip back and get the pass break up. Like some nice stuff. Like he's up and down. Honestly, I was surprised Sidney Jones was inactive. Was that an injury? Like, because I really thought they'd push him more and more,
I
but
don't know, man. He must be not.
apparently not.
Yeah, he must not be doing well in practice.
Yeah, yeah. But
Which
because I think Jackson is the obvious spot to, challenge again. But
Right.
he did okay, and Brian is still learning stuff. But there were signs like his early third down incompletion pass breakup, where he's like anticipating that route a bit more. He's starting to get it, and the Olave catch was, as we said, unfortunate. So I think the coverage group's coming together. I think the linebackers are coming together with them. Yeah, they probably won't run as much middle field closed against the Cardinals, right? Like, and how
Right.
spread out they are. But hopefully, we see a bit more of the fire zone stuff you've talked
Right.
about, a bit more movements up front to help out the linebackers and help them play a bit less conflicted, which I think is why they're
Right.
paused and they're slowing down. But building blocks, real building blocks,
Right.
and up front
What's
as well. Griff Miles Adams got to play four-eye technique rather than head up nose tackle, and lo and behold, he actually looked better there. So,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
he's not a nose, so don't play him there, which they had been doing in past weeks.
Right. Yeah, like you said, less middle of the field close, less one high moving forward. But what was good is that when it was like a rundown or even a mixed tendency situation where the chance of runner pass is roughly equal, or the offensive personnel lends itself toward doing both, right? They were matching up a lot better with the combination of front and coverage. So when they were too high against run oriented or mixed tendency situations, they matched too high with Bear. When they were in four down in those same situations, they made sure to play gapped out, so one high. So like we only saw four down, the 4-2-5 or the 2-4-5, however you look at it, match the too high when it was a much more clearly like, all right, pass situation. So and then we saw a little bit of those fire zones, those man pressures when they were in Bear to help out with the C gap or D gap problem that front represents, and also helps you win back some pressure, right? That you lose because the odds, the four-man rush spacing when in Bear or odd fronts just isn't there. That isn't four down. So like,
and also Griff on that as well. They had the safety locked to the tight ends more rather than getting a nickel on to the run strength. They
there
didn't
you go.
repeat
There
that
you
error,
go.
so they're correcting their. Perhaps you can say it's the NFL. These mistakes shouldn't be happening from a play caller, but they are correcting the stuff, the
Right.
problems we're identifying. I mean, give us a job, Pete. Give us a
So
job. But
so
also, it's nice that they're fixing it. So
yeah, and like people think that we thought Ken Norton Jr. could do no wrong. We were critical. I mean, we were maybe did so maybe a little bit more in good faith, perhaps a little more. Now, I'm not saying people will criticize him in bad faith, but I'm saying we were maybe a little bit more optimistic even when things were bad. But we were critical of him early on in seasons or early on in his tenure. And then when he started doing things better, we simply thought, well, he's doing things better now. Okay, he's figured it out now. So in fairness to Clint Hurt, like this is a new thing to him. Like he has to learn. And then he also had some personnel upheaval that I don't think he was planning on.
right.
In the summer. So, and maybe a more experienced coordinator can smooth that out better, but like maybe it's too many new things going on. If it was just one new thing, the defense could have handled it. But
I thought like Ryan Neal coming, he's being used more in how they were going to use Adams, and that's only a good thing. You spoke.
right.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on the dime thing, because I saw a tweet of yours. But before that, real quick, I thought he had a really rough game. Like, he was making a lot of mistakes. He busted their new cover three, where he should be matching the dude when he's in the outside space. He should be matching the dude vertical and to the outside. But if he runs underneath on a mesh concept, you don't match that, or like a shallow crosser. You don't match that because mesh is coming back the other way.
Yeah.
They've pushed through the back to the flat because it was a mesh wheel. So you don't have a linebacker in that space. You basically need to replace the linebacker and intercept the other thing. Bryant passed off his under, but unfortunately Neal didn't, and they got a big time third down conversion when they were icing the game. And he busted a quarter flat play where he just needs to run with it. And you can see on the all 22, Coach Carl Scott, the DB's coach, he's like, "What are you doing? Like, come on, man!" Like,
so it's funny. So simultaneously, we have two things going on here. We like the dime package, but then also Ryan Neal, who features in the dime package, is not had a rough game.
It has to be Rust. I think it's Rust.
Yeah, he's better than this. Like, I don't know how good he'll be but he's definitely better than this. So, I mean, on that point though, playing cover one man match, the worst call you can get is mesh, and sure enough, they got it. So that is a tough spot to be in. That's
That was
incredibly
3.
confusing. That was 3?
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay, then okay, yeah, you even said then he definitely needs to sit. What is he doing then? Well, that's the Rip Liz issues though, right?
Yeah, that's what
Because
I'm
he's
saying. Yeah.
thinking, okay, that is what you're, yeah, sorry. I missed your point. I get it now. Okay, so yeah, the dime stuff is cool because you can do so many things in it coverage wise. You can, well, even talking the one high world, you can present different blitzes and stuff. And like third down, third and long, or even second and long, you can play with who's blitzing and who's covering the running back and stuff. By virtue of him still being a DB, like you can put him on certain, you can disguise which guy he'd be carrying and which guy he isn't more than you could otherwise if he was a linebacker. Now that said, in order to make those disguises work, you still have to have other calls. So like you still have to call cover 3 with him in there. So like when they were in cover 3, they're playing him in the hook and Josh Jones as the overhang as on the outside. So essentially they're having him be the dime backer or linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is that, and this is the same thing last year when they would replace Brooks with Neal, he's not a better hook dropper than either Brooks or Barton. Like in pure, that's the funny thing. You put out a safety, a 6th DB out there. It's like, well, they're better in coverage, but he's not better in coverage than them in this area. But by virtue of him being a DB skill set, you can still do other things, and then you can use that the benefit, the element of surprise, to the play caller's advantage to, do different things with him. So I'm curious to see how that builds. He is a good blitzer. I mean, if he knows what he's supposed to do, he can cover some guys well enough. He did make a couple of plays on the ball. He did get beat a couple of times, just like he did last week. I still think he'll get better. It is worth noting, though, that when they play dime with him, he's in the hook and they have Josh Jones carrying receivers. And he looked pretty good doing it. Like, and Josh Jones covered well last week, too, in pure one-on-one situations when he wasn't prior. So it's good that they can find a way that Josh Jones can be out there, too, and do things. Yeah. But what are your thoughts there on that?
Well, I just liked seeing Diggs get a shot to come down a bit as well. And it's like a 3 safety deal at times where you can get into different types of cover 3 as well as playing different types of cover 1. So, I mean, that's only a good thing. That's why you do it, because you can get into any coverage you want. But
that's a good point. Yeah. Now, when Diggs came down, who was high? I don't remember. Was it Jones?
Jones, yeah.
Okay.
So we've got 2 questions on the defense before we get to the offense. Camden asks, how did Adams look against the run? Was he getting pushed back? Nah, he was good. Like he's much more suited to playing on the inside eye of a tackle and mirror stepping. And yeah, he was much better. And then Lee Lariviere asks, who did they use as their main Bear personnel on the line? Well, that is literally their listed starting lineup of Nwosu, Al Woods at nose tackle, Shelby Harris and Puna Ford at the ends, and then Boye Mafe as the other linebacker because he's trusted with setting the edge. Now they've picked up Bruce Irvin, as we covered yesterday. I mean, he might be that early down dude like Bam Johnson was. So Taylor's being, not trusted with edge setting, but also he's being saved for later down pass rush, although he hasn't quite got it going yet. Right. Offense, Griff. And this is obviously more positive, but also I think people will want to hear why they went 1 for 9 or 1 for 10, depending on how you view it on third down.
Third downs, yeah. Third downs there was kind of fluky, and that speaks to the high variance nature of third downs, the randomness element. They had a couple of calls where the ball came out and the Saints just defended it really well. Like they had that one like sail cross concept, and it just wasn't working. They called it like 2 or 3 times, and I was actually surprised. That was the one like where Fant got tackled right at the catch point, and then they had another one where I can't quite remember what happened, but it didn't work. And I was surprised that was all Waldron had. I think he thought he was just going to out leverage some guys and get kind of like free yards out of, like, especially on that shallow route. outside of that, like you had the drop touchdown from DK, and then you have the one where they called the touchdown back with the holding call.
Mm.
And then you had I think you had a sack where was that the one where Gino steps up in the pocket and
So
it looks like DK's coming open on a dig, but he's really not open because the safety's sitting there on it.
there was a 3rd and 3 sack where I thought Gino could have thrown the ball, but it was like a weird mesh, and they were like spamming the heck out of mesh, kind of like double crossing, like shallow, like all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff, and it like wasn't that clear. Like for me, if I'd like run through the 3rd downs, like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 18. I mean, good luck with that. Like there's too many long passing downs, and the Saints are sticky in coverage. 3rd and 15. And a lot of it was coverage sacks. Like even the 3rd and 2 at the end of the game, right, where Gino runs around trying to make something
yeah,
happen. Nothing was open. Like what the play
yeah.
and why did they full slide their protection to sell the play action? But then like that was a weird protection call,
Mm.
weird play. Like, and I think it just wasn't their day. And I think the Saints kind of just had better plays. Like it,
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
it's necessarily a Geno issue. There's one 3rd down, I think, which that's normal. Where I think he could have thrown the ball, but that was tight.
Um,
Um,
Now you know what's cool though is because they're some of their pure pass down calls are really nifty, and
hmm.
it's cool to see Chris Richard living in a too high world and see his ideas and see him game plan some stuff. That was cool to see. I mean, just isolated.
Good old Chris.
We miss him.
Revenge game.
Revenge game.
Yeah.
Now that said, Seattle won the day on early downs. They had the most efficient early down offense this week. Um,
Wow. They didn't win the game though.
they did not win the game. You can
um,
win battles, but you still got to win the
so my
war.
favorite thing right now of the offense is how I guess it makes sense with like Pete saying that they're not restricted by Geno Smith and that they are kind of letting him loose and kind of doubling down, tripling down on all of these comments about you know basically what boils down to letting Geno cook. But my favorite thing is how shotgun usage is slowly expanding, and it feels like off that as well. You get light boxes, so you have to check into shotgun runs, but also they're tendency breaking by their kind of
Yeah,
sprinkling in play action where you don't need play action. So like last week they ran stick, but with a play action, like from the gun. This week you had like hold on, little like overroute to Will Disley with guard tackle wrap play action. Like what are we doing here? You had the
which
Metcalf fumble play where it's just a little slant, but you've got play action. Like it's cool, and that tendency breaking theme is kind of a big deal in the whole offense right now.
yeah, yeah. So like they they like took some of their like when they were in under center, they were doing pure drop back and under center a little bit there just to take advantage of the fact that they've been putting on tape that when they're in under center, they're nothing but an outside zone and a play action team, whether it be pocket or boot. So the Saints trot out personnel that is meant for those two worlds. And then sure enough, it's like, okay, well, we've got free yards right here. It's a 250 pounder who is a flat defender. So we'll run quick game here. Or, okay, we're in full house under center. They haven't seen us in full house under center yet, but they know that we only do certain things in full house. And they know that we only do certain things under center. So that means we have a one-on-one with Lockett. If he wins, it's nothing but free yards. And sure enough, he hit Lockett on a little stop route or curl route for 10 yards first down. So like they mixed that in. And then, like you said, when they went into shotgun, they had a couple more of those gun runs where they're not like, they don't have a base gun run still. It's just like taking advantage of really soft fronts, like you said, checking into it. And then they're just running play action, like meshing off of that, right? Off of like the same like trap protection or a puller or whatever. And then sometimes it wasn't even a puller. Um, So yeah, and it's just another way to be like, they haven't seen this yet. So, but like they're the same plays. This is the thing. They're not really expanding their concept breadth yet. They're kind of staying in the same home of what they're calling,
Mm,
but they're just calling it in different formations. And it's like they can just milk this playing cat and mouse when they run what until they start to clamp down on it. And then I think we'll start to see more drop back concepts come in and more um, play action concepts come in. So
makes sense.
in the meantime, just ride the wave because it's working.
Fun times. And like it was cool seeing how in that diamond under center look, you know, it's what we were saying. It gives you really obvious one-on-one shots outside, and with the Saints playing a lot of middle field close looks against that, okay, they didn't connect with Metcalf on the deep ball because Lattimore played it really well, but they went for that and they hit Lockett on a little 10-yard curl basically against that because there's so much space out there, no one's able to help underneath, and you can max protect and you just get the shot. Is what we were saying earlier. You also get a balanced look, and so then when they shift from that into like 12 personnel trips, then you're getting a predictable check from the defense. Like the Saints either went into like under or over and like really vanilla stuff. They can't do much fancy. They didn't really have a pressure check like automatically in. There's only so much you can prepare for in a week. So cool, very cool, and nothing like overly like crazy or fancy. It's not like gimmicky. It's like actually real. So very exciting stuff. Now the rest of the offense, Griff, Gino was like unbelievable. Some of the throws he made, the fan boot rolling to his left, lofted. Um, my favorite one, Griff, was the second strike to Tyler Lockett where they get up a corner post. Oh no, I don't think that was a corner post. I think the first one was a corner post, but that was nice to change that against two man, recognizing the coverage pre-snap. Second time round, he just slots it into two man again, but it's like it's like almost triple coverage, but it's the right throw. It's one of those where with football leverage, it's right there, but
Right.
if you get it wrong, then it's intercepted because there's still defenders who are all trying to get deep. Like
Right. I mean, and the Saints defenders, they have good recovery too. So,
they do.
um,
But that was
um,
what was your favorite Geno throw though?
my favorite Geno. Okay, my favorite Geno play. I won't.
Oh,
I won't. My favorite one was the drop
don't say a check
touchdown
into
to
a run.
my favorite one was the drop touchdown to DK. Got to catch that. It was essentially a
Wow.
Mills. It was essentially like a Mills concept, and it worked exactly how you wanted. And Geno just a strike. Okay. The Fant one on the boot was hilarious because they had the boot contain rusher running at him, and he was like, "Oh shit! If I'm gonna get this throw off, I have to haul to clear him horizontally." And on the all 22 especially, you see like the end zone angle, you see how fast, like you see Gino realize like, okay, I have to sprint as hard as I can. And then he does, and then he clears him, and then he slows down, gathers himself, and still like flips his hips around and throws a perfect ball. Like the whole thing was like Gino just taking over. Um, so that was pretty cool. Actually, that wasn't a cross that on that one, was it? Was Fant actually on the same side?
Yeah, I think that
Running
was
like
just but it was cool that one for like what we were saying about the under center diamond thing because they shifted into that
yeah.
and then as my light goes out, great. Um, and then I think it was just the usual Fans running the high corner. You got
And
a
he
receiver coming across the field on the flood.
okay, yeah.
But
So
what was really cool is like the Saints went under, right? So they've got a linebacker down at line of scrimmage. Like, I'm going to set the edge against this wide run to my side, and
yeah,
then it's like, oh crap, I have to run deep with this corner
yeah,
route, which is way behind me.
yeah. That is cool.
But it was still tight coverage because
I mean,
there's trips, so there's dudes over there.
yeah. I mean, Fant did dust that linebacker though. The
Oof,
initial
yeah, the
linebacker. So
speed showed up for like one of the first times this season.
yeah,
This is like the play to Metcalf where they ran Eskridge on an underneath route. Lockett runs kind of like the Mills element, like a dig, and then there's a post from Metcalf where the safety, because they're in two man kind of look, this or like quarters, but the safety nails down to Lockett and plays tight, and the other safety was playing really tight as well. And so DK, he's got an outside leverage defender up here, and DK bends it in, and it's just bulleted to the back of the end zone, in to the outside of the safety nail and unlock it. And the corner's been run off by Eskridge underneath. And it's unfortunate.
That was a classic Geno preseason moment where he does something absolutely sick and the receiver can't hang on to it.
Classic.
Which, hey, he's playing as well as he did in the preseason. Like, we're just seeing his preseason process extrapolated out to the regular season. And
extrapolate.
And that's it. Okay, so but the other play though, of those two deep post plays, I liked the first one against 2-man in the 2-minute drill because it was designed to look like mirrored smash. So smash to both sides where you have a flat route, then a deep corner route, like a high-low on the corner. And given that it's a cover 2 coverage, you can, potentially get underneath that safety or turn him around. But so the safety to the boundary, Lockett's side, he sees the flat route and he sees Lockett's vertical stem pressing vertical really hard. So he's thinking, okay, I've got a corner route. So he overplays it. He has so much respect for Lockett that even to the short side of the field, he's overplaying this. He's like, I am not letting them make a play here. And sure enough, he guesses wrong, and it's a corner post double move, or dino post. So that's what you prefer to call it. And Lockett just dusts him. Geno, calm under pressure in the pocket, steps up, just delivers a perfect ball. Like, what else can you say? On that second one, though, so they had been running outside the pocket, rollout, crossing flood routes, right? And that play, they'd ran that like 3 times in this game. So that play was all the initial stems were looking just like that. You have Geno taking a big drop in the pocket, but then he caps his drop, right? And it's not quite a half boot, but it's just like a really deep looping pocket play action drop. And then you have DK running what looks like a crossing route, but it turns into a pylon route where he pretends he crosses, but then flips his angle and starts running back toward the near side, like Will Pylon. And then you have Lockett running like he's going to run that clear out route that Fant ran earlier, right? But then he turns him around, and I don't know if he turns him around, but he stems like he's going to. But that stem is enough to get that corner and safety to overplay what they think is going to be a corner route. And he just goes right up the pipe. Now, then they quickly are keen to like, okay, this is what's happening. Like they're trying to be smart defenders. Like, we've seen this before. So we're going to beat them to the punch. And that's what Waldrum is preying on. And then Geno just throws, like, even though schematically it worked, it still required a perfect throw. And Geno ripped that. So, I mean, perfect. Like, we've seen that throw before.
Yeah.
Being Seahawks fans, following the Seahawks. And it was cool that Geno shows that he's got that too. That was sick. That was just awesome. So
obviously the Penny injury is a big loss in the run game. But in spite of that, Kenneth Walker, he had a really impressive touchdown run, although, as Pete Carroll said, that was perfectly blocked, like mid-zone, like perfect. But overall, I think the run blocking is still kind of a up and down experience where, I mean, heck, it kind of is league wide, right? Like, it's difficult, but it still feels like they've got stuff to kind of establish, like, well, that's a loaded word. Stuff to work through, like chemistry to build on, gelling to take place. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah. Something they just need more reps in.
Right. I don't know if it's much more than that, really. Like, we had a question from Scott on Gabe Jackson versus Phil Haynes. I feel like Haynes had one bad play where he gave up some pressure, but kind of a negligible difference.
Yeah, because I thought Gabe is actually kind of playing back to whatever his best self of 2021 was the past 2 games. I mean, he had horrible games, and then he played well versus the Lions, and then he played well in his snaps this game. And Pete said in the post-game presser that it was just a like competition thing, but then it came out that Gabe had a hip problem this game. So
I don't know. Resting is what it was described as.
Okay, so I don't know. PFF graded Damian Lewis really bad this game, and he had so I get so confused.
I don't understand.
Because he only had 2 plays that where you could say, okay, he lost, but one of them didn't affect the outcome of the play, and the other one he tripped, which is okay, sure, don't trip, right? That's a bad play, but it doesn't really reflect how well. And then everything else was really good. Like the opposite of the negative plays were particularly positive. So
Are you familiar with Jose Mourinho?
I don't believe so.
Ah, there you go. Are you familiar with Stormzy?
That sounds like some Twitch streamer name, Stormzy.
Right. Okay.
Who's Stormzy?
Okay, never mind.
Or is that some British pop star? That sounds like very 90s, like disco pop, British pop star.
Pop star.
Have you listened to Stormzy's latest?
Well, okay, great.
It's a really good
enough. Right. The tackles.
Hey, Natasha Bedingfield is like, well, no, is she British? Oh, God, she's not even English. Why do I think she's British?
The tackles were pretty good. Like,
no, she is British. Okay, no, okay, I'm not dogging British pop music. I love Natasha Bedingfield.
It's not pop. Okay, just stop.
Who's Stormzy?
The tackles, Griffin. I want to talk about football. Believe it or not, the tackles were really impressive, and apparently Shane Waldron was thrilled.
Oh, he's a British rapper. Well, I wasn't too far off.
Right.
British musician.
Now next week, find out who Jose Mourinho is, and then we can like piece it all together. Okay. And like Charles Cross, he was meant he had some like you'd like him not to get pushed back quite so much, but also, I mean, he's up against a powerful dude, and he was doing all right in what I saw. And then Lucas, other than the one play where that is kind of a coverage sack because it's a quick game, it should come out a bit quicker. But also, you don't want to get beat like that one-on-one. But then it is also Cameron Jordan. But other than that, Cam. But other than that, I thought Lucas was pretty much flawless. So, and they did do stuff to help them. Not the least, like, these. You made the point to me in the DMs, like this kind of tendency breaking. It stops edge rushers teeing off against certain looks. But they also did some match protect, some chipping, some stuff like that. And they're trying not to drop back too often. But still, that doesn't negate what is a really impressive tackle duo right now. And they've faced like had a baptism of fire in some ways with some of the dudes they've been facing. And the NFL is loaded with that. But I mean, looking at the schedule, I don't know what the Bucks have really. The Cardinals isn't as difficult. I mean, this is all famous last words, but I think some of these first 5 teams, you've had some real tough stuff.
Yeah, and this was a particularly good game for them, not just because they played well and they didn't play great. They were good, right? It was good that they had a good game against this group because for Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, if they had a weakness on their tape coming out, it was like pure power. Now, Cross was different in that his issue with pure power, speed to power guys in college was that he would get knocked back early in games by power rushers, but once he could read their rush plan, he was ready for it. And when he was ready for it, he anchored right away. With Abraham Lucas, he could be ready for it and he would still get bull rushed a little bit. So it's awesome that they had a good game against 2 absolute complete edge rushers, but guys that can absolutely power drive you. In Davenport and Cameron Jordan, and Charles Cross was staking Davenport. I mean, not letting him get anywhere on him. Jordan was able to get some knockback, even if he didn't get a pressure. He was able to kind of move Lucas a little bit, but then Lucas would anchor late, and then later in the game, he wasn't getting moved at all. So, it's really good sign because that's their weakness, and they're improving on their weakness. So it's just good stuff that projects forward there.
Yep. So, projecting forward, Griff, the Seahawks play the Cardinals at home. They're back home. They're not playing at 10 a.m., even if the Mariners, and, hopefully they actually win it. They don't get swept. But even if the Mariners play, it sounds like the game will be pushed back, not pushed forward. So, we're done with the 10 a.m. stuff, which is nice. The Cardinals are... Surely that's the Seahawks which are favored.
The Cardinals are soulless at the moment.
Apparently, the Cardinals are favored by 2.5, which I guess that's the Seahawks defense doing that. Although the NFL.com, which is by no means good site, but by no means a the complete barometer, right? But it's an interesting indicator. They've started picking a bit more of the Seahawks. Like it was that no one would pick the Seahawks, or one person would, but they were actually favoring the Seahawks over their panel of experts. They were favoring the Seahawks over the Cardinals. So that's interesting. And yeah, good test for the defense. I think, in theory, on paper, the scheme they're running and like some of the concepts they want to major in should work here, but also hopefully, like my concern going in is that they don't game plan well enough for the different formations, and the Cardinals are really kind of formation tell. Like they have tendencies, like if it's two back, you're getting guard, tackle, wrap. Like they have plays for certain formations, and that's that. So hopefully Seattle just like I need the defense to be better. Like I think Geno should be fine against this Cardinals defense, but
particularly fine because Vance Joseph.
There's some of the rotations.
This is, I mean, Geno is the type of quarterback that Vance Joseph falls apart against. Whereas, because he's saying we're going to do something really dumb, but we're going to bet on you not finding out where the dumb parts of our defense is. And Geno's whole thing is, I'm going to find out exactly what you're doing.
I'm smarter than you.
Like, even if Geno didn't have a good arm, which we're finding out that his arm is better and better each week, his thing would still be, I'll find the weak spot in the defense, like, but, the flip side of it, the only thing is like, they have an excuse to run more one high, cover 1, cover 3 this week because the receivers are so poor. Kyler Murray still is Kyler Murray though. And he will still throw fade and go balls to schmuck receivers. So they still have to be ready for that. But Mike Jackson, he had weaknesses this game, but he didn't have weaknesses staying on top. So
no, I was saying to Ty, actually, it's going to be interesting seeing Woolen up against a Hollywood Brown kind
Woolen of Woolen probably had his first complete game as a cornerback, at least coverage wise.
High praise.
Hopefully we see it again.
Score prediction.
You know what? Seattle finally has a convincing win. It's finally 27-17 Seahawks. And
31-7 Seahawks.
31-7. All right.
Let's go. Blowout. The Cardinals get the Mariners get swept, but the Seahawks make everyone feel better.
And the Mariners in 5.
Mariners in 5. There we go.
The Mariners will win their first home game. I don't know what happens after that.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching the podcast and listening, and we appreciate you. Please like this video. If you tuned in live, we love you. If you're listening, we love you too. But if you tune in live, we love you. Please like the video on the YouTube channel. Please comment after it's gone live. If you're listening, subscribe, download, 5-star review. We really appreciate you. Also, if you could retweet the tweet from the @Seattle Overload account, that really does help us. Just boost the numbers, get some new listeners in. Tell your family, your friends, if you have them, if you're lucky enough to have friends, tell them as well about the podcast as well. This has been @CMikeSpinMove, Griffin, and me @Matty F. Brown. We appreciate you, and Ty also loves you.
And Ty's guess was 34-30 Seahawks, so he's much more measured. And also shout out Natasha Bedingfield.
And Stormzy and Jose Mourinho.
Those are real people.